And I'm very pleased as well that Consul General Roberto Abdallah from Brazil, Consul General Dimitrios Doxis from Greece, and Consul General Takeshi Ito from Japan, who also accepted my invitation. And it means so much to me that some members have traveled all the way from Italy, from Luxembourg, from the Netherlands, from Switzerland, from UK, from Northern and Southern Germany to be with us tonight, to celebrate with us, which is a true sign of the strong connection to our organization. So I would like to thank all members for your loyalty, for your inspiration and your commitment and your dedication to working alongside the Diplomatic Council over the past 12 years. We are 12 years old. And together, through our forums, our programs, and our initiatives, we did make the world a little bit stronger, a little bit brighter, a little bit smarter, a little bit safer, a little bit better. So most of us are Europeans here tonight, but even within our small group here, we are joined by some non-European friends as well. And this shows how diverse our world has become. And this is a wonderful thing because Europe needs the world and the world needs Europe. In today's interconnected world, every action, every decision, and every initiative has far-reaching consequences for people and nations alike. Take, for instance, Trump's imposition on import tariffs. Canada, Mexico, and China quickly retaliate with counter tariffs, triggering a global chain of reaction. So an action is taken, and it prompts an immediate countermeasure. Because for every action, there's a reaction. So I think we better think twice before we do something, before we set off a destructive chain of reaction. Look, I'm still having recovered from the news that Trump said this morning with the USA taking over Gaza. I think this man is just crazy. It's just, just announcing something like this sends the world into turmoil. And this, I believe, is very dangerous. So as the major blocs, the USA, Russia, China, and BRICS, become more and more aggressive towards one another, competing for economic and technological dominance, Europe must manage not to be crushed in between and be left behind. Europe already faces many challenges in terms of defense, deterrence, disinformation and hybrid threats, cybercrime, climate change, supply chain, bureaucracy. And this leads us to the questions. How secure is Europe in our new world order? What role do we play in a multipolar world? And what does our future look like in 15 years? These central problems need to be analyzed and solutions need to be found. And this is what 21 renowned authors have done in our book, Europe and the Emerging New Global Order. We, the authors, I'm glad I'm one of the authors, we believe that Europe's fate should not depend on the actions of other world powers. We advocate for a proactive approach to building a strong, capable, and confident Europe working in peace and harmony with Japan, with Brazil, with our non-European partners and friends. So the idea for this book originated with Jochen Richter. He's our chairman of the Global Security Forum. He will talk to us later as well. Dr. Horst Walther, our DC Commissioner for UN Affairs, was quickly on board, followed by Professor Dr. Heinrich Kreft, our Diplomatic Council President and former German ambassador. Together, they are the three editors of this outstanding work. Now let me introduce to you our first speaker, Professor Dr. Heinrich Kreft. 40 years ago, he began his service in the Federal Foreign Office. He then served in the embassies in Bolivia, Japan, USA, and Spain, before becoming German ambassador in Luxembourg in 2016, where I met him 7 years ago, and I was capable to convince him that the Diplomatic Council is a very cool organization. And you know what? He still believes me. So for the past 4 years, Heinrich taught international relations and European studies as the head of diplomacy program at the Antrosy University in Budapest in Hungary. Heinrich is a prime example of how the retirement age could easily be extended up to 80.
Oh, let's see.
With his razor-sharp intellect, decades of professional experience, he's full of drive and energy. And I'm taking advantage of that because it would be a shame if he did nothing but play golf now.
Ah.
He's very familiar with international orders, and his contribution to this book is very impressive. So now I invite him to talk about his contribution.
Okay. If you haven't seen it yet, here it is. Well, thank you very much, Hang, for the flattering introduction. And well, I'm very happy to be back here in Frankfurt, back to the New Year's reception. That's the second time in this location, but I think it's the fourth time in total. So I've seen quite a few familiar faces here, so it's great to be back. And well, I hope that that I can live up to the barrier you put very, very high. But let me also greet my my colleagues. I should say now I'm no longer belonging to your club, but yeah, right. So very welcome to you as well. It's great to have you here. Well, I will be talking tonight about, Hang mentioned it already, about Europe's strategic challenges in the evolving new global order. And I will restrict myself to 5 challenges. I know there are many more than just 5. Well, let's start to look at only the last 4 years. What has happened since 2020 when Joe Biden took office end of January 2020, and what has happened already a few months after he took office. The most consequential event in my eyes was the abrupt withdrawal of the US from Afghanistan. And this happened end of August, and you certainly remember the photos, this chaotic situation at the airport in Kabul. And it marked the beginning of a chain of events. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, unprecedented pressure from China on Taiwan during the years to follow, the Hamas attack on Israel, and the chain of actions and reactions that followed because of these actions. And in parallel, we had the once familiar East-West relationship hardening. Major emerging powers like Brazil, India, Saudi Arabia, and Indonesia, and many more have grown. Europe's weight in the world has weakened. The role of international governance bodies like the UN Security Council, like the World Trade Organization has eroded, and more generally, international law is constantly challenged. And this has been crowned, you mentioned it, by Trump's return to the White House. It's the last 4 years that has put the world upside down. The world is in transition. It's in transition to to a new global order. That's the topic of our book. And times of transition are often times of uncertainties, times of disorder. I promise to do my utmost to counter any defeatism which might come up. In our book, which Henk already has mentioned, we call on Europe to prepare better for the rapidly changing global environment. Europe has to embrace strategic autonomy in as many fields as possible. Jochen Richter, he will talk about this in much more detail. With the hindsight and the modesty of an observer, I will offer an assessment of strategic challenges for Europe in 2025 this year in order of decreasing importance. Ukraine, we have a young Ukrainian among us here tonight, is number one. Number two, it's Trump's America. Number three, Europe. The Middle East, number four, and the Global South, number five. Challenge number one, the war and eventually peace in Ukraine. Russia set out to conquer Ukraine in February 22, betting that the country would quickly collapse. This did not happen. As we know, this did not happen because of the heroic resistance against their aggression by the Ukrainian people, and more or less because of this heroism, they forced us. Ukraine forced the West to come to their support. Because if the Ukraine would have collapsed within a week or 2 weeks, no support would have been possible, logically. Well, were the arms transfers, were the Allied support to Ukraine adequate and timely? I think I should leave this to historians. For the time being, in fact, for several weeks now, Russia has been making progress on the front line, slowly, but apparently not decisively, to really make Ukraine collapse. But Ukraine is suffering dearly by the incessant bombings of its infrastructure. Ukraine is holding firm until now, but its leaders, there are voices from the military, but also many more from civil society, which tell us that even leaders are not ruling out the possibility that sooner or later at least some sections of the front line could collapse. And Donald Trump, as we all know, has repeatedly boosted that he could resolve the issue in 24 hours. He has been more cautious since he is elected. He's now talking about a couple of months, but even that is a very, very ambitious goal. Well, President Zelensky himself, of course, is trying to adapt to this situation. He has adjusted his stance in advance. He is now ready to consider territorial concessions in exchange to NATO membership or equivalent security guarantees. Yesterday he said, well, if not NATO membership, maybe nuclear bombs would be enough for Ukrainian security perception, but we can all, I think, imagine what this could mean. Well, deep down, I think Ukrainian leaders probably prefer Trump's approach to Biden's approach. With the latter, support was never decisive and mostly not timely. I'm not talking about our own country and other Europeans, and this would have created, if Harris would have been in the White House now, the prospect of an endless war. So I think at least with Trump in the White House, there is the possibility that the war could end earlier. But the question is, how? And with Trump, the risk is there that he agrees to a bad deal. just to get over with it, just to fulfill his campaign promise to end the war, like his Mikado he did with the tariffs with Mexico and Canada, and well, let's see. This is postponed for 4 weeks now, but let's see. And he declared already victory and said, well, I delivered. Well, so if this is going to happen, or if this is a possibility, there's a huge responsibility for us, for Europeans, to weigh in, to bring our weight to the table. Some commentators, even in Germany, well, we are in a political campaign, have mentioned that the strategic cost to Europe would be not that big if Ukraine would either lose or at least significantly getting smaller because of losing territory. I believe the opposite. Russian victory would carry significant threats to European security, particularly in the context where the United States might disengage from the old continent. It is unclear to what extent European capitals are ready to engage in a close and coordinated discussion with Washington on Ukraine. In any case, the Europeans can only hope to influence the events, and we will only be able to do that if we stay united and if we are able to significantly contribute to the security guarantees. And security guarantees acceptable to Ukraine. In practice, what does this mean in practice? This most likely will mean European boots on Ukrainian soil. Hopefully with the backing of the US. Otherwise, it would be really a very risky situation. And well, the debate is out in Germany, and some are making the point if it's not better to get Ukraine faster into NATO instead of sending national helmets, national soldiers from various countries into Ukraine. I think probably smaller countries, but also Germany, would be probably much preferring a NATO engagement instead of a national engagement. Well, troubling is also Putin's position. Putin is definitely less eager to get a peace, let's talk about ceasefire, not about peace. So, and he is a guy who knows chess. He knows to bluff. So let's see if Trump is living up to Putin in this game. And well, if Putin not agrees to talks, this means the war continues. So we have to take this into account, that this is also a probability. And this means more financial support, more military support, more economic support from us. Maybe even only from us. Trump might be willing to sell American weapons to Ukrainians if we pay for it. And this would be a smart deal for him. Well, so this is challenge number one. Challenge number two, the Trump challenge, or should I rather say the Trump Musk challenge. It's hard to say if that challenge is bigger than the Ukrainian challenge, but both are very closely tied to each other. Well, Trump's reappearance in the White House has a structuring, or should I rather say a destructuring impact on the entire international scene. For the European Union, the expected shock on the trade front is anticipated. And here I'm sure, Jochen, you know Europe better than I do, that the Commission is well prepared to counter this. And well, what China is doing, what Mexico has said in their first response, and also Trudeau from Canada, we are much more serious guy on the economic, on the trade bloc than the Canadians and the Mexicans. So, but what about the other issues? Trump has demanded 5% of GDP into defense. Well, Richter, our new Secretary General of NATO, is already talking about 3%, 3.5%. Even Robert Habeck of the Greens, the Chancellor candidate, is talking about 3.5%. Who had expected that from the Greens? But it's necessary. It's necessary. And Richter even talked about the possibility of war. So we really have to think about this. And I think our still defense minister, he was very much slapped in the face by his own party when he talked about the Bundeswehr has to become kriegstauglich. But that's right. So what do you need an army for if it's not kriegstauglich, if it cannot fight? So the army has to be able to fight. That's definitely clear. So there's a consensus. Europe has to do much more on defense. But it's not just that. It's now I have to rearrange my yeah. So I was too quick. Well, there are other suggestions by Trump which are even more disturbing. His talk about claiming Greenland, about the annexation of Canada and the Panama Canal. Well, we have seen this is not just talk. Rubio, the foreign minister, was sent to Panama. Well, the Panamanians had to at least tell them, well, we will restrict the Chinese influence. Well, okay, that was the minimum they had to say to signal that they are willing to talk. His business partner, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, he has threatened the British Prime Minister. He flirts with the AfD in Germany and other right-wing parties, and he's just dissolved USAID, which is a huge blow to many countries on the globe. And USAID has a 6 times bigger budget, or had, I should say, than Germany, for example. So it's no way that Europe can replace this. And we have not just Syria and Gaza to rebuild. The other big forgotten civil war is Sudan, with over 100,000 people being killed there, totally destroyed in many parts of the country. So the Americans are definitely needed, and without the Americans, many hundreds of thousands of people will risk to simply die from hunger, because USAID is the biggest donor for the World Health Program. So Trump's second term is likely to come as a much bigger shock than the first. And every day he makes it clearer that he recognizes only China, Russia, and maybe India here and there as peers, and not us Europeans. Well, Japan is maybe in a good situation because Shinzo Abe was able to establish a good personal relationship with Trump during the first term, and Trump knows he needs Japan to deal with China. So you might be lucky, at least in the political front. But when it comes to tariffs, I'm not so sure that you will not also be a target by Trump on the trade front. Well, how can European strategy adapt to this challenge, and with what partner? So I come to my third challenge, and this is basically the consequence of challenge number 2 and number 3, and this is basically what our book is about: building a stronger and more resilient Europe. I will be here short in this part because Jochen will much more talk about this. The almost reflexive response to the above question is to prioritize the European project. There's no doubt the European Union is the first line of defense for all of us, even for the bigger countries, for France, for Germany, for Italy. Without Europe, we are all small. Now, that's what, Jean-Claude Juncker, Francis, you know this, Jean-Claude Juncker has said various times, there are two types of countries in the European Union: small countries and countries who haven't realized that they are also small. So, so he was not naming Germany, but of course he had also Germany in mind. Well, how the European Union itself, but also big member states, France and Germany, are going through a period of significant weakness. Over the last 10 years, European economic weight, once on par with America's, has fallen far behind. In cutting-edge technologies that now make up a big difference. Europeans seem unable to compete in the race between the United States and China. We are struck, however, by a certain stagnation in our debate in Europe. We are talking about the remedies proposed by Enrico Letta here and Draghi on the other side, but it's just debate. The action is still missing. We have to boost our economy. We have to become serious on defense cooperation, no doubt about that. And we need closer cooperation between Berlin and Paris, and we have to increase this to Warsaw, to the classical Weimar Triangle, which hasn't worked during the Kaczynski times, and now it's not working because Paris and Berlin haven't really cooperated well during the last three plus years. Well, frankly, I expect Germany to play a more active role after February 23, and I also think that France and Germany will get closer to each other, and this is actually what other Europeans want. Well, I lived 4 years in Hungary. I participated in many conferences in Eastern Europe, and that's what you hear there all the time. We want Europe, we want Germany, we want France, we want the two countries to lead, because there's nobody else. And there's another famous quote of Radek Sikorski, who is now again the foreign minister of Poland. He once said, "I'm not so much troubled about German leadership in Europe, but what is troubling me is the lack of German leadership in Europe." And I would include also Italy. Italy, well, has also to do more on defense in particular, but you know this much better than me. So let me come to challenge number 4, the new geopolitical map in the Middle East. Well, you all know, October 7, 23, Israel was shaken by the unexpected and very bloody, ferocious blows by Hamas. Since then, Israel has changed the geopolitical map in the Middle East. It has decimated Hamas, well, at a very high civilian cost, no doubt about that. He has decimated Hezbollah in Lebanon. He has twice bombarded Iran. Iran is now substantially weakened and deprived of a large part of its proxies in the region, and itself vulnerable to massive strikes on its nuclear installations, because when Israel bombarded Iran, they bombarded in particular the air defense. So Iran is without air defense, and Russia cannot deliver supply because they need their own air defense because of Ukrainian drone activities against oil and gas installations. But there are other byproducts of Israel's moves: regime change in Syria, the relatively rise of power of Turkey, or I have to say now Turkey, a relatively and a loss, also a very important loss of Russian influence in the region. What does this hold for us for the next couple of months? Well, Trump definitely, he wants the guns to fall silent in the Middle East. His team, as we know, helped to broker the ceasefire agreement, helped to broker the hostage deal with Hamas, and Israel's prime minister has just been to Washington, and you mentioned the loose talk of Trump that America owns now or wants to possess Gaza. I doubt that he has spoken to at least one of his advisors, because I think the youngest advisor would have told him, well, be cautious about this. And even Netanyahu, he couldn't believe this gift he was handed over by Trump at this moment. And well, it goes with he wants to rebuild Gaza, but during that time the Palestinians, the Gazans, should leave the Gaza Strip, and Jordan and Egypt should take them over. And of course, they smell it that it would probably be difficult to return, and that's exactly what Israel wants. Israel wants to relocate the population from Gaza to other places, but that's the old story that Palestinians were never integrated, not into Jordan, not into Lebanon, not into Egypt, and even those who went to Kuwait and Qatar and Emirates are not really integrated. They are welcome when they are skilled labor, but they are not integrated. They are not loved. No, not at all. Well, so let's see what this really brings us. He might have two trump cards. Netanyahu. One is that he decimated air defense of Iran. So he could convince Trump to go back to his policy of maximum pressure on Iran. And I wouldn't exclude, it's not a high percentage, not a high probability, but I wouldn't exclude, because Israel always wanted to destroy the nuclear facilities in Iran. It was always a big risk because they need refueling and they need US support, and they have to fly over Arab states. And without agreement by the Jordanian government and Iraqi government or Saudi government, this wouldn't be possible. So this is one thing which is possible, not a high risk probability. The other thing is the Abraham Accords. So the rapprochement between Israel and some Arab states, Trump started during his first term, and well, Biden has succeeded, has taken this over, taken this on board, and the big thing, of course, is Saudi Arabia. And well, nobody knows exactly why Hamas really took the decision to attack Israel. There were already close talks between Riyadh, Washington, and Tel Aviv at that time. So maybe Hamas wanted to stop this. But Saudi has been very, and the Emirates as well, have been lukewarm on support for the Palestinians. They have supported Palestinians because of the pressure of the street. But it's not their political intent. So these are the big coordinates. So what role for us? What role for Europeans? There could be a modest contribution for the rebuilding of Gaza if it's done in a way everybody would expect that Gaza will be rebuilt where it was destroyed. So, but we would definitely not be able to lift the funds, to bring on board the funds necessary to do that. So, but we will not be able to do nothing. If really the Americans want to do this, well, I don't think that we object that when they want to rebuild it. But let's see how this really goes in the next couple of weeks. But the other thing where we should be and could be do much more is Syria and in Lebanon. And of course, the French have a very big stake in Syria as a former colonial power. It was not a surprise when my former boss, Alina, when she went to Damascus, she did it with her French counterpart. But not only that, she went to Ankara first, knowing that Turkey will play an important role in Syria, also in the future. And her next visit was a visit in Saudi Arabia. So these are the two capitals who have to really be brought on board to rebuild Syria, but also to put pressure on the government, because we all know where this government comes from, what their origin is, and there has to be pressure on them in order to stick to their promise to have elections at least in a couple of years, and to create sufficient living space for all the minorities, including the Alawites, who were very close to Assad, being himself an Alawite. So another thing, of course, I will not go further into that, is Tehran. If there will be no confrontation, is there another chance for nuclear talks? There are secret rumors now, open intelligence sources saying that they are secretly pushing now to accelerate the nuclear program because they feel weak, and because of that, it would be logical to think of accelerating it. This could mean it's necessary that we push in Vienna for a new round of talks. If not, Israel and US could take the other decision I already talked about. Well, lastly, my fifth challenge, I will be short on that, the Global South and the coalition of middle powers. Well, the Global South is gaining more and more influence. Well, the BRICS, everybody knows this term, and the BRICS format has been, or is being taken much more seriously now since Johannesburg, in particular, when it became clear that it's attractive. It's attractive for many countries. Not all. Argentina at the end decided not to join, and South Africans didn't necessarily want the Nigerians in. Okay, so there were even more who wanted to join than actually were taken in for this or for other reasons. Alongside, but there is also another category within the the global south, besides the BRICS, it's the category of middle powers. Well, there are quite a few of them, India to Turkey, Brazil to Saudi Arabia, Indonesia to Morocco, and many more. And they carry a much bigger economic weight in today's world, and with economic weight comes political weight, political influence. They are not marginal anymore. Well, and we have seen this with their refusal to isolate Russia economically and to impose sanctions after Putin's attack on Ukraine. This came as a surprise to us. This came as a wake-up call for us and for the broader West. And we have to realize we were not successful to isolate Russia, but we found ourselves being more isolated than we thought we would be. And this is a huge challenge for us. We face the strategic threat posed by Russia. We face the harsh economic and scientific competition by China and the US. And now we have this unpredictable president in the White House. We cannot ignore the growing threats and uncertainties. We cannot ignore the fact that Europe is shrinking in the global balance of power. But there is no alternative. There's no alternative to call for us to fight against defeatism and to defend our interests and values. And two other seemingly contradictory lessons emerge from this above analysis. In a world that has become so complicated, so complex and challenging, it is in the interest of Europe as a whole, not only to stay united, but to diversify partnerships, while at the same time sharpening our focus and better prioritizing our strategic priorities. And that's exactly what our book is about. And I leave the rest to Jochen, which is the bigger part. Thank you.
Chaos in Germany as well. Let's wait and see what happens after February 23rd. But now, let me introduce to you Jochen Richter, who has initiated this book. Jochen Richter is our chairman for the Global Security Forum. He has a degree in public administration. For 30 years, he worked in the EU, both in the Commission and in the Parliament. He had positions in research, competition, internal market, and arbitration. And at the end of 2020, he retired as a director of the European Parliament. Since then, he has been teaching at university in Luxembourg and Düsseldorf, and since January 24, he has been teaching at the Catholic University in Lviv in Ukraine. And I also welcome our young Ukrainian visitor here tonight. It's been a far way for him to come here, so welcome once again.
It's over there.
I know where you're sitting.
Over there.
Young man. Jochen regularly participates in international security forums, and security is his thing, actually. And by the way, next week we'll be having a book presentation at the Munich Press Club. You guys know that Ambassador Christoph Heusgen has written the foreword for this book, and we are really proud of that because he's the chair of the Munich Security Conference. It's really a big deal, and there's a big probability that he will be coming to our event next week. So yeah, that's a wonderful thing. But now let's listen to Jochen, and he'll be talking a little bit more about the book, and then afterwards we'll have some fun time. Jochen.
Good evening. Thank you so much. And I know you're waiting for another part, not for another speech, so I will limit myself. You know, when we started this a year ago, I was hoping that I could stand here tonight and we have it in printed form, but keeping more than 20 people on board was less than obvious. But we made it, as you can see. So thank you very much. Now, let me start with a more general reflection. In which world are we living these days? And I think Ivan Krastev, the well-known political scientist, he put it in a brilliant way. He said, we are like cats who have been living in a wonderful, warm house for a bit too long. So everything was at hand, and we got a bit lazy. Now we are out in the open, on the streets, it's cold, it's ugly. And we still cannot get our head around it. And then he said, it actually reminded me of this American film where this guy sits the whole day in front of his TV, never leaves the house, completely off reality, until the very day 2 burglars are coming into his house. And he finds the scene so absurd that he has no other reaction than to take the TV control and tries desperately to change the scene. Now, Professor Kreft already painted a rather bleak picture, and as he rightly said, a lot more things could be said. I found a wonderful quote of a German writer who teaches in the United States, Joseph Joffe. And maybe we should note it somewhere when this presidency is over. Because he said, power demands responsibility. And he continued to say, that already Spider-Man knew. And in foreign policy, it's the other way around. Responsibility creates power. So maybe one day that will be, again, the course of things. And I will not add more things to what Heinrich rightly said, European strategy and not discussions and reflections, and another analysis is necessary. And gentlemen and ladies, you will not read another 1001st book of what not works, but you will read a book where all the authors committed also to give ideas what can be done. And you can call them provocative or not working, but then please make a better proposal. Now, 5 quick chapters that summarize the many other hundreds of pages. Deterrence. And you know the Diplomatic Council very well, so of course we are not in favor of a new arms race, but we don't leave it to a chance either. So the authors rightly are saying more cooperation, please, less duplication. Yeah, let's not look so much at our naval point that nationally looks so nicely but doesn't work anymore. A second element is this war that unfortunately still is ongoing in Ukraine is a terrible combination of a strategy of the First World War with latest technology that is evolving almost on a daily basis. And therefore, we have included an ethics professor. Why that? Because this modern technology creates a moral dilemma. You sit miles, if not more, away from the impact. So it becomes almost like the video game that my son loves to play, but it has a real effect. So please take the time to think about those consequences that we are exposing here. And of course, critical infrastructure is another theme. It's now in the news every day, so I think I don't need to say much more. We have a particular case here as a kind of case study in the book, and that is the question, do we have in future still the right to access the international waters freely or not? And from my Romanian friends, I know they are heavily investing in new resources in the Black Sea. If that is not secured, this is null and void. We cannot allow this. Now, NATO's strategy in protecting our critical infrastructure has already been labeled by some people of, this is the impossible task. But come on, we finally are on the move here. So we are doing something. And a technology that many in this room are very interested in, AI, can help here. The second element is resilience, something that goes much beyond any military consideration. It's a civil task. It's a question about civil protection. And quite honestly, looking back at what happened after COVID-19 started, quite some years ago. We fortunately have forgotten a lot of this. But one consequence was that only the military was able to organize certain processes. Very bad idea, as we know now. Yeah? It has increased the distrust in the state. But so how do we involve a larger population in this whole thinking? Now, is there hope? I would say so, because we have the Finnish and Swedish example of total defense. That sounds very martial, but it means a lot more than this. And of course, private stockpiling shouldn't create an outcry. I'm not talking about the toilet paper we are still thinking maybe about, but that the German Civil Protection Organization had to take those informations down because it created an outcry is ridiculous, to put it very mildly. So we need to talk here, and we need also to talk to our youngsters who know that there is internet 24/7 wherever you are. I had a brilliant discussion last year in Ukraine with the students, and I said, so how was it when the internet was gone for 24 hours or sometimes longer? And then one student was smiling at me and said, yeah, we thought we're going to die, but then we found out, no, actually we don't. Yeah. Now, cybersecurity, equally something that is nowadays, of course, everywhere being discussed. And a few years ago, those who are in that field know this was for security geeks and some IT nerds. Now everybody talks about it, but are we acting? I don't think so. For three reasons. We have a very bad combination of too often shareholder reward thinking. Could we duck away, maybe, from the problem? It will only hit my competitor. And then last but not least, we have a very bad mapped IT system. So who of those who have an IT system know exactly which part of your IT complicated system talks to whom at which stage? I think go home and check that. Anyhow, what I'm saying here is we have a problem particularly of SMEs and the public sector that often has also rather old technologies. And what are the specialists telling us? Please share your incidents. Don't be shy in saying, oh, it hit me, but I don't tell my neighbor, because the neighbor might experience the same thing the next day. And that actually we learned a few days ago, the whole German solar installations could be switched off in one go because of our wonderful Chinese parts in there. Should maybe make us think. This information, ladies and gentlemen, we all follow probably very interested what happens between the DSA, the European Act on the one hand, and a certain X on the other hand. I'm curious myself, but you probably remember Mark Twain allegedly said, a lie is 3 times around the world before the truth has the shoes on. Now, the fourth element is supply chains. Now, all the people who have a company know this was never a foregone conclusion, leave alone secure supply chains. But probably you agree that globalization has led to a kind of unhealthy concentration. But what's now the question? In my humble view, are we sticking to a system that so far was rather successful? Or are we changing horses and we become what some people call autonomous? Well, my humble conclusion at this moment is if we are still in favor of an interconnected world, we are as Diplomatic Council, of course. We believe in a rule-based order. Yes, we do. And we have hope that trade leads to a better world, and we cannot be in favor of isolation. Now, the book has industry voices here, and they are coming with some ideas. Fifth element, almost the last, before concluding, climate change. Of course, climate change is happening. Yeah, I think we all agree on this. But neither hysteria nor trying to ignore the problem is a solution. And honestly, Europe can make as many efforts as they want. We can not save the world. What I'm convinced of is we are not the last generation, as some people are claiming. So let's act, and we have 2 prominent voices with very different points of views how to deal with this issue in the book. And we are looking forward to many more to tell us where we are right or wrong. Now, let me conclude. And the book is ending with something where we thought a long time about, and we called the chapter in the end a call for action. Because I think it's time that we stop just analyzing and analyzing, leave that to the wonderful people in universities and wherever, but let's try to do something. I think we owe this also to our children, and sometimes I think also some in the room, our grandchildren. Secondly, of course, I have to say a big, big thank you to all my co-authors. Some are in the room, others I will meet when we travel through Europe. Thank you for adhering to sometimes crazy deadlines and to other requests that I was shooting regularly on you and that you kept it going until the end. A very special thank you goes to a DC member and my good friend, Dr. Horst Walther. Without our endless sparring discussions we had over this process, the book probably wouldn't be what it is. Thank you, Horst, for all your help. And now we're going to travel around Europe. We have already a couple of meetings fixed. Others will come. If any other region is happy to have an event around the book and around the challenges, please approach us. Thank you for your kind attention. Have a lovely evening and see you in the course of the evening. Thank you.
I had a hard part on this book too, because I had to work on